Hello, everybody. So, another stream here. After we did one a few days ago, I know there's stuff going on all over the place at the minute, but it is a very special kind of time at the minute. Joining me today is my usual partner in Lorne analysis. It's Mr. Shin's Koala. Hello, sir.
Hello, I'm just a tag along. Yeah. Hello.
And also, another very special guest, Tiffany, is here. Hello.
Hello.
Now, this is going to be good because we can obviously get some quite deep insight. And Lorne's in the chat as well. Hello, everybody. How have you got access to the internet? Because maybe we can get him stitched up with another violation there because...
yeah, I'm screenshotting right now. So. Like that.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. I know there's all sorts going on at the moment, but hopefully we can have a bit of fun. Now, the way I was gonna start it off was just we covered quite a lot of stuff on Friday when we did the stream, but I'm not sure if anybody has had Tiffany Lockhart's view on things. Now, Tiffany, you were speaking to Lorne directly before he went into his he messaged your alter ego and said, I mean, you posted it on the Facebook page, didn't you?
I did.
So
I got a text.
Yeah, you did. So it's kind of eerie in a way. I kind of remember looking at that and feeling it's kind of like a really biblical moment of kind of looking at that and thinking that was the time Lorne went down. And how did you kind of? Do you want to take us through it timeline wise by what happened when you message when he sent you the message and then you found out what happened?
I'm sure. Actually, I had known about the meeting with Maria for quite some time. So it probably had been maybe about a week. I can't remember exactly, but it was close to something like that. And I was waiting for him to have the hammer drop down on him because I knew that this was not going to be good. He had received a text from Maria saying that he had to come in and talk to them about being suspended from his rape class. And actually, he had reported for the class last Monday, and that's when he was told that he was suspended. So he stayed for the whole class. Then he left and he contacted Maria. She never called him back, and he received a text the following day. And then that's when he knew that he was going to have to go in. So that's pretty much what happened. He didn't seem too worried about it. He had talked to his ex-girlfriend, Winnie, and she was asking him, do you think you're going to get in trouble? And he, of course, was saying, no, we're just going to, we're going to talk about it. And he probably just figured he was going to get another slap on the wrist, just like he always had. And this time he didn't come back. So I was thinking when I received the text, I was waiting all day. It was almost like I was, I was waiting. It felt like the OJ verdict, and he was completely silent. And we're thinking, was he told something? Did they really tell him you cannot speak to anybody? Like myself or Winnie or Emma, anyone at all. And that's what had happened with Ramona at one point. His probation officer said, you can't speak with her anymore. And he didn't for a couple of days. And so I thought that was one possibility. And we were going to have to wait it out a little bit for him to come back. And then crestfallen, was able to find that he was incarcerated again.
It's an amazing revelation, isn't it, Shin?
Yeah, they actually had the arrest warrant issued like a week before. So that's interesting. They didn't execute it until he walked in. So he walked into handcuffs, essentially. I hope, and as I said, I hope he enjoyed that last drag on a cigarette before he walked in. But usually, they give you an idea that they're gonna surrender you or something, at least your lawyer does, bring your toothbrush, things like that. But yeah, he's totally oblivious. I totally understand that. I totally agree with you. I think he thought he was going to get a slap on the wrist. He has no idea that he accumulated so much up to that point. Maybe if there was much less write-ups and violations, he might be able to take it as blasé as he did. But no, he's just totally oblivious. He thinks that his charm will work, as it always has, with probably his probation officer, except for his supervisor, which was interesting. And I think his day had just finally come. He was on borrowed time, and he was done.
It highlights, like, one of the probably the most amazing thing about the whole Lorne saga is he always manages to surprise us. Just think about that for a minute, because the sort of the kind of how great that surprise runs is, I can't think of the words. This is a guy that got humiliated like no man ever has, and yet even he gets himself in even more ridiculous situations. You would think that after getting humiliated like that on Dateline, something would crop up in his brain and say, like, I've got to change, or something along them lines. He doesn't, but not only that, he gets involved in even further delusions and caught up in even crazier situations. Like, you would think that there would be some kind of reform in his character, that within the last 7 years there would be some improvement. But you put it, we were chatting briefly the other day, Tiff, and you put it very, very well and said that I'd not really heard it like this before. He's self-destructed, and he's been on a path of self-destruction ever since he left prison, hasn't he?
Absolutely. And he, just to go back to what you were saying, I think that he did have a glimpse of reality when Chris Hansen walked out, and he said, I was afraid of this. It didn't last long,
did it?
No, it didn't. But that, he did say, I need to get off the internet.
Do you know what? I was thinking that exact same thing today, because as God forgive me, Lorne does crop up in my brain, unfortunately, quite often. And I was thinking, because obviously when I do these streams, I don't plan it, because it seems to go better if it just flows, but, I don't structure it. But I was thinking about just what we're saying now about why has nothing ever clicked with Lorne. And I remember thinking, the only time that there's ever been a realization is when he sat there and went, I think I've got to go to counselling to get off the internet. I've got to do something because I can't do that. Oh my God. And then that was it. That was it. His realization lasted 10 seconds, and then it was over.
Well, there was some sign of it when he said something to the effect of, I was afraid this was going to happen. Stupid move. So he had some inkling that there was a possibility of what was happening was going to happen. And you're right. I don't think the gravity set in, because I think he was totally confused sitting in that chair, trying to figure out who Chris was. What does this all mean? And then when he left, he probably didn't expect to get arrested outside either.
No, he had no idea what was going on, did he?
Sheriff's office down.
Yeah.
That's pretty much that's a red pill right there. But yeah, he walks around just dumb and happy somehow. I don't get it.
No, well, we don't, and that's the kind of beauty of the situation, because we're never going to really understand why he makes the decisions he does, why he thinks he's great, why he can't see the truth, why he can't accept responsibility. We'll never quite understand it. What you were saying then, Tiff, about he had that realization when he was with Chris Hansen, from all the time that you've spoke to him and everything that you've kind of been through, you've kind of listened to him in all kinds of states, being abusive, being, this, that, and the other. Do you not think he's ever come close at any point to that kind of a realization when Chris Hansen comes out since?
Who's that for?
For Tiffany.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking. I'm going to say no. I think that there were a couple of times when he would sort of get close. I think when he was realizing that his victims were not his girlfriends, that he's the adult in the situation and he was taking advantage of young girls, I think he was able to say the words. And, you know, I'm sure that that was just because it's what I wanted to hear. And he knew that.
Yeah, because he was just repeating you verbatim, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. But at the same time, I think that he would get to understand. He would get to understand some things. He could see what I was talking about. Because one of the things that I wanted to do was to be as clear and direct as I possibly could. And he can hear that and he would listen. But at the same time, you know what, it would always amaze me when he would completely backtrack and he would go back to saying, well, I was messed up at the time and I really did not want to go there. Yes. Yeah. And it would drive you so crazy. So
yeah,
I really don't think that he truly understands what it is that he's done. He doesn't understand what type of person he is because he tries to fool everyone. And he's thought that he's been fooling everyone ever since he got out of prison.
But to fool, sorry, can I just interject? To say to fool everybody, Tiff, would mean that he knows what he is really, because in order to fool somebody, you've got to deceive them. Or is it... So in other words, that deception is premeditated. So I have thought that he doesn't truly understand. He doesn't see himself as the bad guy. He sees himself as the victim, as he always has. So when you say he's fooling people, is it a deliberate act?
Yes, it is deliberate. So just like when he has lied on his lie detector tests, and I'm convinced that he's lied on every single one that he's taken. But when I say that he knows that he's done wrong, he knows that the things that he does are wrong. But where he plays the victim card is how he became that person who is doing all of these things.
Yeah, and you know, another reason I think for his deception, or I should say his refusal to accept responsibility for things we know about, is I think that it's also his way, I think, it's kind of a defense mechanism to prevent us from knowing any more about him. If it wasn't for Tiffany and Ember and all that crew, we would know about real victims. We would know about the child pornography. You know, this is stuff that he wanted to keep away from everybody. Obviously, anybody would do that would. But so he was protecting more than his image about not wanting to go there. He was also trying to keep possibly us looking into him a little further. And he always had that to hide. When you always have something that huge to hide. By the way, I think that's just the tip of the iceberg too. That's just my guess. You know, I think there's more possibilities out there. Maybe he didn't have a relationship with a girl, but he definitely tried. For every one he got, he probably tried 10 times. So my guess is a lot of stuff that was driving him was his deep desire to keep certain information, the truth about him, away from anybody. And I think that drove him. And thank God for you, Tiffany. We know who he is.
Well, the reason why he was able to talk about the known victim is because it was in the chat log and he forgot about that.
Yeah, that's right.
So when we were reading it, if you go back and listen to when we got to that part,
right, yes,
it really caught him off guard.
Yes. That's exactly right.
Because you had to actually, if I remember correctly, you had to actually say who's and then the person's name, didn't you?
Right.
That's
how it started.
And he kind of paused, and if I remember correctly, the tone in his voice was a little bit more subdued, which it's something that you pointed to as well, Shin, is that I can't even remember whether we said this on a video or whether we were talking on the phone, is when he said, I think because you were really pissed off about that situation, weren't you? It really fucked you off big time, as it did with everybody, but it really got to you, didn't it, on a personal level?
Let me give a specific example of what set me off with that. When he was talking about how they expose themselves, there was one scenario where apparently she was on a computer that was in a public place in the house. Let's call it a public place. It wasn't in a private place. And she was sitting, as near as I can tell, near a hallway that led to a room or a kitchen where her parents were. Right. And then that's when Lorne made it a point to say, hey, she looked around to make sure nobody was looking. And then she did that.
Yes.
I was putting myself in the father's shoes if I came around the corner and saw that. And what I would do. I could only imagine what the father would have done, would have thought. And that's apparently what hit home with me. What if I was in that kitchen and I came around, I saw my daughter flashing somebody on the computer, and I looked and I see this ogre talking to her.
So you connected to it in a personal level, didn't you, Shin?
Yeah, I did.
Really? Which a lot of people do. And let's not forget, there's some people in this community, some people who content creators that have been through very difficult situations when they were younger, and it's like sometimes people react angrily to things I've said where it would appear I'm sticking up for him. I'm never trying to stick up for him. I'm always just a seeker of the truth, and sometimes it makes me say things which some people don't agree with. Sometimes I get it wrong, but I never forget the impact it has on people out there that are affected by people like Lorne. And one thing that he said, which I think is really important, you kind of made me aware of it, Shin, or pointed it out, was when he said we cared about each other. And that pissed me off as well, because
anything. And
that's what someone like him says. They don't care about each other. He's not interested in... What have you got in common with a 15-year-old girl when you're like, how old would he have been at the time?
It's worse than that. It's worse than that. When he says we cared about each other, what he's actually saying is I successfully groomed her.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
If you look in the criminal code, that's exactly what his actions were.
Yeah.
So yes, you successfully got her emotionally somehow attached to you, which is exactly what the crime is here, and what the sin is here, the biggest sin. So that's what he meant. And then I love the way Tiffany said, "They're not your friends; they're your victims." And then he tried to equivocate on victim number 2, and then he realized he was. And then the best part was when she insisted that he was a predator today. She made him state it, declare it, and he kept again hemming and hawing about, no, not today, it was back then. And then you reminded him of his predatory behavior with Winnie's daughter. It was still there. It was
that highlighted, if anybody ever forgot what this guy was,
nowhere for him to go.
Yeah.
It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. I loved it. I cheered and I played that over and over again.
When you heard that tale, Tiff, when you were listening to it, how did you feel when you were listening to it?
Well, I knew the existence of this person because I remember him talking in the chat log about this girl on his MySpace page. And it was during that particular part when I got off track with Lorne and got him to talk about it, because he mentioned her and said it was actually when Kayla had said, who are the other kids? And he said, oh, that's my, nieces, nephews. And then there's someone else too. She's in the first spot. That was somebody that, we had dated, but then we decided exactly. So I knew the existence of this person. I knew there was going to be more than that. And Shin, when you had mentioned that for every successful one, there's going to be a minimum of 10 bombs. And I absolutely agree with that. And I pointed that out to him as well. He, of course,
denied
what he did with that. He denied it. Exactly.
Yeah.
But then, even with Kayla, we can say, okay, there's a minimum of 2 other decoys that you try to talk to. You don't remember who they are, which, okay, fine. You're not going to remember screen names. I get it. But you have to at least remember that you were trying to get someone. And that's exactly what he was doing.
It's basic common sense. I mean, if you think about it, what are the odds that he would land on somebody right away who was broken and fit all his needs and was able to groom? Right away. Like the first time he tries it, right away.
Right. And he's going to know all of the tricks. He's going to know how to be careful, because it seems to me like, and I had mentioned it to him as well, that his victims, and with Kayla as well, that was all an escalation, and everything had escalated up to those points. So everything before then, he's going to have, contact with people and kids online when he's trying to go after them, that are going to be freaked out by someone as old as him contacting them.
And maybe adult women too.
Sure, absolutely. So certainly, I can see him going after, we'll just say Disney Girl, and he says, that I think he was 37 at that time, or almost, and for her to stop talking to him immediately, because there's not going to be a 13-year-old girl who's going to be interested.
Mm-hmm.
No, but he was banking on that.
But and it wouldn't take much for Lorne to interpret interest. So
sure, absolutely.
Chances are it would probably turn into almost a harassment campaign.
Absolutely. And when he was talking to the particular victim that we're referring to, eventually was able to get out of him that he was the one that was asking her to flash him. Right. He was the one that was pursuing her. I mean, because she was absolutely in a hallway. Her parents were in a kitchen, and he exposed himself, and she did the same. At the very beginning, though, when he's talking about it, he's positioning it as if she did this and I just went along with it, or she showed me, so I showed her.
How did you do that, Tiffany? That is incredible. I mean, that's where I thought that he was going to leave the story, but for him to admit that he's the one who asked her, and I guarantee that was not, there was more than one or two incidents that I'm sure he did it many times.
Yeah, because what are the odds that it was just one occasion where he exposed himself, and there was one occasion where she did the same thing? It's just for him to admit that, it's like the old rule of a guy saying how many girls he slept with. That rule would apply to Lorne in these situations, because he's never going to tell you the truth. It's just not in his nature.
No, exactly. Which, again, I guess do we want to go into that, or do we want to talk about the latest developments? What do you guys want to do? Oh, by the way, Andrew, do you think that I'm sure a lot of people have questions for Tiffany?
Yeah, well, I've got the chat in front of me, so if anybody's got any questions, but I mean, we talked about it in detail for about an hour and a half on Friday, so I wanted to get to cover slightly different topics. So I think what we can do, let's if I can switch to the document that we've got on here.
Yeah, there was some about what he's looking at, what Lorne could be potential. I can go into that, in terms of just giving the community an idea of his possible dispositions on this case.
Well, I do have a question first.
Sure.
This is referring to his original sentence. So he received 60 months of imprisonment, followed by lifetime supervised release. Right. And I think that that people will typically, and I know I do it myself, I would interchange supervised release with probation. Mm-hmm. And it looks like they're two separate things, because when you look at the warrant itself, there's a checkbox for probation violation petition, and there's another one for supervised release violation petition. Right. And that's the one that's selected. So I wanted to see if you could explain exactly what that means.
Well, there's so many degrees of probation. You have unsupervised probation, which essentially costs the defendant nothing. But then you have a probation where you have to check in every now and then. So conditions are always different in each case. But when you have supervised monitored probation, you could have anything from ankle monitors to house visits, to weekly visits, to extreme conditions like rape class and AA and all this other stuff that he has to do in addition to that. So supervised essentially means that everything he does, he has to check in with probation. That includes everything, every aspect of his life. including finances, because he fills out a lot of financial information as well.
So sorry to very quickly interrupt, but before I forget, Shin, so this isn't, and forgive me if I've missed something, but this isn't part of his sex offender kind of requirements. This is a separate issue of probation.
Well, no, it is the sex offender requirements. Well, the RSO is a separate condition. Let's put it that way. But when you talk about supervised probation, that's what it entails. That's where he sits down with probation. They put together a plan for him. And they say, this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to do, and this is what you're going to pay for. And it's very, very strict. The difference between unsupervised probation is you can carry on with your life. And then at a certain period, at a certain time, it either terminates on its own when it ages out, or you can go in and get an early termination. But the only thing you really need to do in those situations is check in once in a while, and sometimes by phone. And there's no travel restrictions typically, or I should say, travel restrictions are given liberally with just probation, unsupervised probation people. But that's the other thing. If you're unsupervised, I believe you can travel without permission. So, I mean, again, I could be wrong on that, but they're quite lax compared to supervised. Supervised probation is essentially you're going to be a ward of the state your whole life. Everything you do has to be approved by them. With unsupervised probation, you could pretty much go on with your life and just don't commit another crime. That's it.
There's a question for you, Tiff. Can you see the chat?
Sure.
Let's see. What
From Bunky.
Bunky, yeah.
Did Lorne think you were his girlfriend when he got taken in, and did he call you to call his ma to let her know that he got locked up? He didn't think that I was his girlfriend, but he thought that there was a chance.
You cleared that up.
As clearly as you could possibly try, anyway.
Right, exactly. So he still believed in that chance. Up until he got taken in, I was getting songs sang to me over voicemail relentlessly, poems, all kinds of things. You know, I didn't get Mr. Penis pictures because I had set that rule a long time ago and said, absolutely, you will not send that shit to
Boring.
me. So, I know. I think that we have enough, though.
Tiffany, you're saying there's a chance.
Where's all that 1 in a million talk?
Right. That's exactly what he. That's exactly what
he has a rapist wit.
You even mentioned that movie to him in one of the calls, don't you, Tiff?
Yes. Oh, I did. I said, you're that guy. You're the. I mean,
That's right.
I felt like that female character saying, "No, I don't like you. There's not going to be a relationship." And he absolutely would incensed. I deserve a chance.
Yeah, and you ask why? Why does he deserve that?
Yeah, and he never really answered.
Well, yeah, it's similar. His answer is similar to because you won't find any other love like his, or because you deserve it, or it's kind of he won't tell you what he has to offer, obviously.
No, because he doesn't have anything. But no, he did not call. In order for me to call his mom to let her know, I'm sure that he probably. I'm thinking that maybe he called her. Or he called one of his brothers.
And remember, he put a lot on your shoulders right now, Tiffany. You're thinking about him all the time now. He's in.
No, and as a matter of fact, one of Clobbering Time's favorite moments is when I'm explaining to Lorne that I will not give a shit when he gets locked up again, and I'll just say ha ha ha, what an asshole, and then I'm going to go to the beach.
Yeah.
So that's.
And not even think about you.
Not even think about you.
And he tried to equivocate. He tried to, similar to his kind of thing where he says, "Well, you don't like me? No, I don't. Well, right. you don't despise me then, right? No, I don't despise you. Good, we can work with that."
Do you know what's really interesting, and it's something that I think we've all become quite aware of when regard to his kind of confessions to you. When he there's a moment of realization when you're talking to him, and it sort of sinks in that he hasn't got a chance with you, that you genuinely don't like him. His attitude towards you changes completely, in that he doesn't think at that moment he doesn't think he's got a chance, so he becomes nasty. And it's not just rejection, of which none of us like. It just shows you his ulterior motive for talking to you and for opening up.
He made a great comment. What he said at the ADD. If you dropped him, he'd say you never loved him to begin with. That's one of his big go-tos. But to me, it's Tiffany. You might have noticed this. He doesn't stay with heartbreak that long. He moves on to his next one right away.
Oh, yeah, he does, definitely. That's how he got to me.
Right, and from you, he tried to get to Casey Moreau, right? And that's who he's trying to get you to do. That seems to be where his attention was, so much.
Yeah, just for a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, he gets over heartbreak pretty quickly. So
yes, he absolutely does, and he's that's the reason why, even when you look at the Rhoda situation, or even going back with Ramona, and you have Michelle Simpson calling him, and he is kind of giggling and saying, we don't have to worry about my girlfriend. She's never going to know. That's the way that Lorne operates. He needs to get laid, and he can't pass up an opportunity. He's like a wild animal looking for the next meal and not really sure where it's going to come from.
Yeah, he's not going to put eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Yeah. So he, even if he's saying, I love you, and he's screaming that he loves you so much, and he's demanding the same type of loyalty back, if someone else winks at him, or maybe, even by mistake, he's going to think that they're giving him attention. Mr. Penis is going to react immediately. So he wouldn't turn down anybody.
I've got a funny feeling Mr. Penis is past reacting. That's just a theory I've got. But
what?
I don't think Mr. Penis works anymore. Not that it ever has.
Yeah.
But let's not go there, shall we?
I'll send you some photos.
I want to put them on my office.
Maybe. But should we go over this document?
Yeah.
Sure.
You can both. Oh shit, Shin, I'm not sharing with Yama. Let me just change things so that.
Where are we?
You can see my screen. Just 1 second. Oh,
and while you're doing that, I do want to say that I believe that this particular judge, John Woodcock Jr., he is the one that's been on all of the probation modifications that Lorne signed off on, that he's violated.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Everything below. I do believe that this is the same one, yes.
Well, he knows the history pretty well.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, and the letter, of course, that great letter Lorne sent.
We will talk. We will discuss that another time, just in case. We will do a video wholly on that, just in case there's people in the chat who don't know. We've got a copy, and God bless whoever it was that got hold of it. Right, well, good on Crestfallen, because whoever got hold of that letter, it's great, and we're gonna talk about it next time. It's a letter that he wrote in 2007 to the judge just after the Ramona situation, and it's fantastic. It really is. It's a great find and a pivotal moment in the Lorne saga, as if we didn't have enough. But anyway, now, can you both see my screen?
Okay, where are we, in Skype or on the
on
YouTube?
Skype.
Oh, hang on a second. Okay. Yes, there it is. But
right.
Do we want to show them, or
they can see it?
Oh, they can.
Yeah. All right. So we have the document that says the original date of sentence, which is a moment in history which we'll never forget, the 30th of June 2008, which is when he originally got.
I'm sorry to the world.
Yeah, that kind of nonsense, and it's not like me to do such a tasteless thing. I love that slip of the tongue. It's just it's just absolutely fun. I bet there was some sniggering in that courtroom at that point. I love that. Anyway, so violation of standard condition 7, the defendant shall refrain from excessive use of alcohol. Oh my God. On September the 15th, 2015, during a home inspection, United States probation officer Mitchell Oswald observed Armstrong consuming alcohol. He admitted he consumed 4 beers, 8 empty bottles were observed in the residence.
Yeah, but what does he know? According to Lorne, he's gay. So, he can't have he can't be too respectful. His opinion isn't that the one that Lorne suspected is gay that is coming on to him, Mitchell.
That is true because of his hairstyle.
His hairstyle, right?
Yeah, but I also want to point out that this was brought up to Lorne as well, because I was going over his violations with him, and when he was reprimanded for this very incident, and he had stated that the empty beer bottles were from the day before. So apparently there's an 8-pack that's sold, and I said absolutely not. You were drinking a 12-pack. You just hadn't finished them yet. So we'll just leave it there.
Absolutely. I don't think that there's any situation where Lorne would have beer and save it for later. I think it's all gone.
Absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I mean, and the funny thing is that he'll say he doesn't remember an event, but yet he will also remember that those beers were not from that time.
My shoulders were tight. My muscles were tight.
Yeah, his muscles were tight.
You can remember that specifically? Okay, that's good.
Right, absolutely. And then and then he will also make mention, and the next one that Andrew's going to read off is that this had to do with Ramona. But of course, Ramona hadn't happened.
You got to fill up, Andrew.
Yeah.
So, right, on the 7th.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right, Tiffany. You caught that. Caught that.
Oh, it's
the 5th, October 7th, he blames on the catfish.
Armstrong reported to sex offender treatment meeting. That's rape class. Sex offender treatment meeting while under the influence of alcohol. Armstrong later admitted to the treatment provider that he consumed 3 beers prior to attending the treatment. So this guy turns up to sex offender treatment class drunk.
In the morning. Right? I assume, Tiffany, his classes were in the morning?
Well, typically they were in the afternoon.
Okay.
They were about 1 o'clock. So it was early afternoon. But the other thing that I want to point out is that when he got into this and he was talking about this very specific incident, he had shown up. This was during his first course of classes. And so he had gone to the counselor, and the counselor could smell the alcohol in him. That's the reason why she knew. And I would like to see if you can guess the reason why he said he smelled like that.
I think I know. I'm not gonna do this, but I know. It's funny.
Go on, tell me, because I'm not sure I remember.
Okay. He said that he ate fruit.
Fruit juice. Right.
Is that it?
That day. Yeah, and that's the reason why.
And it fermented in his stomach or something. Who knows?
Right, and somehow that made him smell like beer.
I applaud his bizarre creativity in a way.
Well, I suppose when you're drunk, I mean, think about something that, I mean, first of all, I don't believe that he had 3 beers. He had 6 of them.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
October 7th, 2015 was when this happened. But he had been in sex offender class since 2012, right?
I would imagine so, yeah.
Yeah, and so we're talking about, I believe in the average, it's an 18-month program. And so he was a failure already at this point. So he was a star pupil.
So the next point, violation of special condition added through modification on the 9th of
conditions, yeah.
So that modification will have happened because he turned up to the treatment class drunk. Is that right?
Yes.
And who would have signed off on that, Tiffany?
That would have been Lorne.
Oh, well, the judge.
The judge. I do believe that it was the same judge. Yeah. So one of the interesting points that I would like to make too is that I think the way that he would talk about these signatures that he would have to do, it was almost as if he was stating that it was like just an acknowledgement. Like, oh, Maria told me I can't do this. Okay, I'll sign off on it. He wasn't framing it as he's signing an order that's going to be filed.
Yeah,
for him to follow. Yeah. So, so obviously he misses the point yet again.
And this is a 0 tolerance policy on alcohol with this new condition. So, I don't know if the gravity had hit him at this point, but now It's not the condition used to be to not abuse alcohol. Now it's no alcohol. So the original condition,
Right.
typically that's what the conditions are.
So, like, you guys, and you especially, Shin, and that's no insult to yourself, Tiffany. It's just that Shin's obviously worked in that field, of course.
Yes, of course.
But for instance, in the UK, we don't really have such strict. It sounds bizarre, but our treatment of sex offenders is very light compared to you guys, and I wish it was a bit more like this over here. But with the alcohol, the conditions regarding the alcohol, he's turned up to the sex offenders treatment drunk, which is obviously not a good idea anyway. Within itself, I mean, it's just a bizarre. It's comic. No wonder you're laughing, because it's very funny. You've got a guy who's a sex offender who's got to go to these. I know it sounds comical, but let's just call it rape class because it just sounds ridiculous. And he turns up after a few beers. Now, what does that say? That says so much about his character and his state of mind. It says that he's obviously got a drink problem, number one. Number two, he's got like a lack of respect for what he's doing. He's not taking it seriously. He's got no self-control. He's not looking after himself very well. It highlights so much. But why were those conditions that were in place? Because what it says here is that he's reported to sex offender treatment whilst under the influence. So what I'm asking, I suppose, is during a home inspection, observe Armstrong consuming alcohol. So was he not allowed any alcohol at all?
No.
From the moment he got out of prison.
You can see the condition right there. It says the defendant shall refrain from excessive use of alcohol.
So what would be defined as excessive? Is that something?
Every time Lorne drinks is excessive.
Right.
But they come out with subjective. My guess is anything close to double the legal limit. Who knows? But it's a very general standard that is in pretty much every probation agreement, to not abuse drugs or not to use illicit drugs or abuse alcohol. So he's lost the privilege of even having alcohol right now as a result of. Okay, to answer your question, Andrew, a good example of excessive use of alcohol is coming to rape class drunk. How's that?
Oh, well, I mean, that's
kind of self-explanatory, I think. I don't know.
I would say that's the biggest kind of excessive alcohol that one could possibly imagine. I mean, it just baffles the mind.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it makes sense that these conditions are there because basically you want somebody in his position, you want them to have some kind of control over their actions. You want as much as their self-control at the disposal as possible, and the more that they drink, the more dangerous they are, because clearly you've got somebody who is emotionally unstable and a danger. So it's a very wise thing to have in place, especially with his beer, his relationship with alcohol. So it was just something I wanted to touch upon. So is there anything you wanted to add, Shin, before we go into point two?
I just say real quick, a lot of these are alcohol violations, and I think I might have an understanding of what's going on in Lorne's mind on this thing. What he'd like to do is cherry pick the conditions that he wants and doesn't want. And the way he does that is he justifies the drinking in his mind as having nothing to do with his underlying charge. And that's what he pretty much wrote to the judge. And so I don't think he ever took that condition seriously. But the problem with that is when you're under those conditions and then you're being monitored and then you're asked to disclose things and you're not honest about it, that's a separate violation. So the honesty aspect became a big issue in this, as you'll see as we go along, because it's more than just alcohol, I believe. I believe it really came down to his total lack of candor, his total lack of honesty, which is an essential element when you're dealing with your probation officers. So I think the alcohol issue just kind of set that up for him. So he's going to lie about that, but he lied about a couple of other things, as we'll see. So
Do you want to read this next part, Shin, if you can see it?
Let's see. Okay. We got through the. I can't really see it. You got to scroll up a little bit. All I can see is the.
So it's this part, Ron.
Oh, I see. What these are. This is a special condition that he had to add onto his. In other words, that general condition of not abusing alcohol became a special condition to not use alcohol at all. It evolved into that. So basically, what they're saying is,
he screwed himself over there, hasn't he? Big time.
He did. If he didn't abuse alcohol, he would have been fine. If he didn't show up for rape class, he would have drunk. He would have been fine. But let's see. Defendant shall not use or possess any controlled substance, of course, alcohol or other intoxicants. In other words, can't use, not abuse or use excessively, and shall participate in a program of drug and alcohol abuse therapy to the supervising officer's satisfaction. I don't know if you ever did that.
I think that's Allie.
That's who?
I think that was Allie.
Oh, he had the hots for her. He'd love that. Okay. This shall include testing to determine if the defendant has used drugs or intoxicants. Defendant shall submit to one test within 15 days of release from prison and at least two. This is usually conditions they add on as soon as they get out, so they kind of add that on as a boilerplate. Hang on a sec. Shall admit to no more than 120 tests per calendar year as directed by the supervisor. And defendant shall pay for the services during such treatment to the supervisor's officer's satisfaction. Shall not obstruct, tamper, or try to obstruct any tamper. So this is he didn't get his breathalyzer at this point. That's what it looks like. But he will have to submit when he comes up for testing, and he's still okay at this point. I mean, if he didn't do anything else, I don't think they would bother him about this. So this is they're not putting a breathalyzer in his car or in his house or making him do any excessive testing or anything like that. This is just a standard. Don't drink alcohol. We're going to test you once in a while. Be cool. And he wasn't. So that's pretty much it. And that was written up in the new agreement that was signed by Lorne, and apparently, we think it was Judge Woodcock who agreed to it. Everything has to pass the muster of the court. So, all right, that's pretty much it. Not very exciting.
Okay, well, let's. So, as a consequence of that, on the 4th of May 2017, Armstrong admitted to supervisory U.S. probation officer Bruce. I've not heard his name mentioned before.
That's Bryce.
Bryce. Why did I just say Bruce? Because I'm
know.
thick, maybe? That might be the answer. Bryce.
Exactly, that's the answer.
Thank you, Tiffany.
You're welcome. That is Maria's supervisor.
Ah. Okay.
Oh, the guy who didn't buy it.
Mm-hmm.
The guy. Oh, I would love to be a fly on the wall with that conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, that letter is so illuminating about his relationship with probation. And again, I know we're not talking about that letter, but it's kind of apropos here. I think that one of the things that I don't think you were even aware of, Tiffany, at the time that you had that hot and heavy relationship with him, that he was actually constantly warned of being revoked over and over and over.
Yes, he was.
They were actually telling him, you're about to go back to jail. You're about to go.
So did they actually? Do you think they actually used those specific words, Tiffany, and they actually said that to him in such a plain?
That's what he said in his letter. So.
Yeah, I could see them doing that. I could see them certainly warning him, like, listen, this is what you're signing here is going on top of you for your supervised release, and you need to follow that. None of this other bullshit that you've been doing all this time. And if you do not follow this, then you can be revoked and you can go back to prison.
Yeah.
So I do believe that they were telling him that, and he didn't care.
Wow. He's just, I mean, I was going to leave this till a bit later, but let me just ask you these questions now.
Mm-hmm.
It's when he says he doesn't, basically he's been given all this, he's got these conditions, right, that he can't do this and he can't do that, which is very restricting and it must be difficult. But at the same time, there does seem to be a part of him that values his freedom. He doesn't want to go back to prison, or he didn't. But he can't. He can't want it that much to do what he's done. He just wasn't able to send himself straight, was he? He wasn't able to do what's necessary. Do you think that it was because of a genuine alcohol problem, which some people do suffer from physically? It's like some people get like physically addicted to it, I think. Do you think it was more that, or just what do you think the main contributing factors were to it? Or is it a combination of those? Does that make any sense?
I think it certainly can be a combination. I don't know a lot about alcoholism, and I don't know how it's related to him because I'm not around him. I just know from when we hear him when he's drinking. I don't believe that he admits to as often as he drinks. So I think it was happening a lot more than what he would admit to.
Quantity and frequency, I think. Quantity and frequency. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that for him, alcohol was more of something that he could step away from his loneliness, and he could go hang out with his buddy Tony.
Bingo.
And he wasn't going to feel all of the shit that he was feeling, because he would, even though with Tony, he was one of the people that Lorne would lash out at when he was drunk. So not only would I get messages, any of his girlfriends get messages, whoever's number he had, they would all start getting really nasty messages when he was drunk. But Tony also got them. And it's because he knows that Tony has done some shitty things too, and he's pissed off about things that he's done with him personally in the past. But one of the things that he will always go back to is he'll say, but I like drinking with Tony. I can just go there, I can have a couple of drinks, and we just sit back and we have a good time. But when you reiterate to him, but you get upset when you drink, you get into your car and you drive, how is any of this productive? And yeah, I know that, he starts to get all mopey. But the point is that he drinks because he doesn't want to feel. And I think that's what goes along with anyone who is engaged in an addiction that kind of blossomed from them feeling something that they didn't want to.
Because this was prominent when he moved to Nashville during the Holy Lornography. He mentions it to Kayla on numerous occasions. We know he was drinking a lot of beer. There was even occasions that you knew he was drunk when he was talking to her, when he kept spelling everything with capitals and yelling at her. Now, we've all seen it. I've had an alcohol problem in the past. I was able to manage it. I don't drink anymore. I can still have and enjoy a drink, but it's took a lot of hard work to get to the point where I'm at now, where it doesn't bother me at all not drinking. And a lot of it...
That's because you've replaced things in your life. You've replaced
but he's not had the... I've been a bit more fortunate in my life, more life than Lorne, but I've also worked a lot harder than that motherfucker has. So he wasn't willing to do the graft, and he had the opportunity at every point. And if you had these conditions, you would think that it would send you on the straight and narrow. It's also worth mentioning before we go any further, Tiff, that we know, or we think he did, that he got, like, he was getting treatment from A&A, from AA, wasn't he?
He was. So allegedly, the last time that he drank was July 7th. And so he had just received his 30-day chip from AA.
That's an honor system, though.
It is, but
Absolutely.
We don't know that. What do we think? Tiffany, I think you're probably best placed to answer this. What do you think the odds are that is a genuine chip?
Good question.
It's not.
Right. Are you conclusive on that?
I'm not conclusive because he hasn't come right out and said, yes, I was drinking at some point. But I don't believe that he gave it up completely.
No. I mean, for what it's worth, I don't either. I think it's too much for him. Do we know, is there any way of categorically saying how long he has ever gone without any drink? Is there any way that you could know for sure?
Prison.
well, apart from prison. And he probably got some inside, I would imagine.
Well, he did, but again, the length of time between the time he got whatever toilet hooch he was drinking and the time he got it again, that's probably the longest period he's ever been without alcohol, my guess.
And smoking as well.
And smoking, yeah. Yeah, of course, he's going to pick them both right back up when he leaves.
Yeah.
He must be going out of his mind now.
By the way, can we, since we're on the topic of alcohol, can I just say something from? Let's just say that I got this case and I had to defend him. I could see where I would go with this case.
Sorry to interrupt you, Shin. When you say got this case, do you mean now or pre?
Yeah, now. Yes,
right.
Now,
okay.
The revocation here. Yeah. I'm just looking at the stuff, and there would be only really two options I would have here. First of all, I would never put him on the stand. Number one.
Well, you don't need to tell us that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be very good at your job, would you?
No, but at the same time, 95% of these cases are settled. There's a joint agreement between the U.S. attorneys and the defense attorney, and Lorne just signs off on that. And typically, that's what's going to happen. So they won't go through an entire evidentiary hearing. If they go through a evidentiary hearing, and Lorne has turned down a pretty satisfactory deal that was on the table, the judge is going to make him pay for renting that courtroom. I'll tell you right now, because there's no way he's not going to be found not in violation here. But the obvious defense here is to use the alcohol and to try to push for treatment. That's what I would do. I would try to push for an inpatient facility somewhere, maybe 3 to 6 month program, and then have them evaluated, brought back in, and make a determination at that point. That's what I would do. I would also argue that his elderly mother is getting on in age and that she needs to help him. I know that he doesn't do shit for her. I know that, but I'm just trying to tell you as a lawyer, these are the things I would say. And I would go with the alcohol defense because I would try to make this seem more like a health issue than a criminal issue. And but as we go down further, it becomes a little more difficult with his lying.
Okay, that's interesting.
Dishonesty. Well, if you think about it, you don't really have much of a defense here. But like I said, my guess is they're probably going to work out some kind of a deal. I know the probation's looking for, well, we'll go through this later, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's really interesting that. When you say this treatment center interests me a great deal because that's something that one would assume would be his best chance of rehabilitation. So if you were arguing with him now, let's just say the hearing was taking place right now and you was pushing for this treatment centre that would last, 3 months, 6 months, what would you have to do to get that into play? Would that forego any sentence?
Well, yes. I mean, I would argue that in lieu of a sentence, yes. I mean, let's get him treatment. Let's put him in an inpatient facility so he's monitored completely. He goes through...
That's got to be costly.
Well, that's the point. But there are, I remember we used to send people to facilities. Salvation Army has them. Red Cross. There are a lot of free charitable places. But the problem with those places is they don't have enough beds. And sometimes the waiting list is months and months and months. So there's a chance that might be a disposition, but he'll be cooling his heels in jail while they're waiting for a bed to open. So there's a lot of things that this judge can do. He can give him a full 3 years. He'll do 85% with truth and sentencing. He could go less than 3 years. He could add a ton more conditions on him and just set him out again, thinking that 30 days he did is enough. But it seems to me that, especially from this document, that probation is highly motivated to put him back in for 3 years. So they're going to have, if I was a lawyer, I would sit down with them and just pound it out and see what I can do and get him as little a time as possible and possibly some treatment, and then force him to take it. But I would not want to go through a trial with this. If I were, it's an untriable case. It really is. Yeah, that's about the best I can see. And again, well, we should go down for it. I keep thinking too far ahead.
No, it's good. So we were on. We've done the top one on the 4th of May. So on the 26th of July, which is not long after, Armstrong admitted to his officer that he consumed alcohol that day. Now, what we've got to remember about this as we're going through this, these are just the times that he's either admitted it or been caught. He's been drinking virtually. How often does he drink, Tiffany, on average?
I would say every day.
Every day.
I do too.
That's got to be an expensive pastime, as we all know. I mean, does he drink? What does he drink? Does he drink cheap cider?
No, I think he drinks Bud Light.
Right. Okay. So.
And I don't know the exact cost of that, and what it would be to get a 6-pack every day. But he doesn't have a problem spending money on himself. He smokes 3 packs a day. So even though he's not buying, name brand specifically for his cigarettes, he's still spending money, a couple $100 every month.
CT, to answer your question, it depends what the judge had for breakfast. You don't know. And it also depends on what they could work out with an agreement. But I do have a feeling he's going to do some time. Whether he does 3 years, I think that depends on whether he insists on going to a full hearing or not. If I was his lawyer, I would really beg him not to do that.
I mean, we can see from this, right? These are just the times. It's all alcohol related. Armstrong called his officer to report. I mean, let's just skip ahead here to the 28th of June 2019, which is obviously very recently. Armstrong called his
Let me point something out really quick here. When he's saying Armstrong admitted to this officer he consumed alcohol that day, when you're seeing all of these admissions, that's because he's getting caught.
How is he getting caught?
I would say I believe that the 416 was due to a polygraph. And then again, he had June 28th here. But I think he's been having to do polygraphs all along. So he doesn't admit anything unless he gets caught.
So why does it say there? I mean, I might be sort of picking up on nothing here, but it says Armstrong called this officer. If anybody was to read this, it's like there's moments of honesty where he's coming clean.
Well, this last one where he's saying he called this officer to report he had consumed alcohol 3 times since his last polygraph, that was because he was up against the fence taking another polygraph. And I can't remember on that date exactly, but I do believe that he failed. That was okay, now I remember. This was a polygraph. He had failed.
On the 28th?
So, yes. It was either on the 28th, it was somewhere around there, because he had to retake it again in July. And when he retook it, that's when he failed again. So the first time was in June.
Yeah, and you got to remember, all these violations are a violation of his first his first modification. That is 0 tolerance for alcohol. That's why the dates are like this. And then when you look at below that 3, they're talking about the facts pertaining to those violations. So there's 3 violations so far I see here. But Tiffany, didn't you at one point demand that he call his probation officer?
I did. I was hoping he would.
Oh, that wasn't a result of this? Okay, I thought.
No. I got him to call his mother though.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
Great.
Because one of the most frustrating things, I think I can speak for everyone, is that Lorne drives when he's been drinking.
We've not even mentioned that. Yeah.
It's it was happening constantly. And so, when you are hearing him say this to you over the phone, he goes into the same song and dance. He does it the night before. He will call and he'll be so remorseful.
Does it happen virtually nearly every night, Tiff?
It wasn't every night because he didn't go to Tony's every night.
He didn't have money every night either.
He didn't have money every night either. But the other interesting thing is that he had no problem taking advances on next week's paycheck in order to fund his drinking.
From who?
From his job. So he had the option to take like $100 draw on the following week's paycheck in advance, because he didn't have any money and he wanted to go drinking. He did that a few times. So then he was constantly, coming up short. He's not paying his obligations.
Would anybody ever provide him beer? I mean,
no.
Is he the only one buying it?
He was the only one buying it. I think the only person, he did have another friend that he would drink with seldomly. So he would go to his house, and I think maybe it's possible that this person had beer.
Right.
But for the most part, I would have to say probably when he went there too, he was bringing it. But definitely for Tony, he brought it 100% of the time, and a whoopie pie for Wendy.
Right. Okay. And he got locked out of the house in the middle of the winter for his effort.
Well, they would get into fights because, of course, you have, these two idiots drinking like crazy. I mean, the volume that they would drink was pretty staggering. Not only, to have Lorne drive, but even just to have someone, because all it takes is for someone to, shove past someone in the wrong way or make a comment that's going to piss them off, especially for someone like Lorne, who's really pissed off on the inside. All it's going to take is for Tony to be like, get on the ground, get down, which he would do sometimes, to make fun of him. And Lorne is just going to get mad and they're going to start scuffling. And so that's when Lorne would get locked out, and it would be probably, I think at that point, it was a very, very cold winter. So he was locked out.
My favorite excuse is that he wanted to impress you with his bad boys.
Oh my God. That's got to be.
I have a question. Did it work?
Yes.
Did it work?
Come on. You were secretly impressed, weren't you? You was like, you know what?
Definitely.
He's actually all right, this Lorne fella. I actually like his bad boy.
Bad boy. I didn't look at it that way. Yeah.
Even I was thinking of like switching sides, if I'm being honest.
Oh, of course. I mean, I wouldn't blame you because obviously, the first thing that you're going to look for if you're going to switch sides is someone who is going to not have a problem getting on the road and almost killing someone.
I mean, at least they'll always be able to, give us a ride home from the,
true. He did call for a cab one time.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I actually and that when he was giving him shit about not tipping the guy or something, I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I don't think he paid very much, but we knew that was going to be the one and only time that he was ever going to pay, because I want to say it was probably at least $25.
And I think that the cab driver was a woman too, wasn't she? I mean,
no, it was a man.
Okay, but he probably used he's trying to impress anyone while he's on his giant headset.
Talking to his girlfriend. Yeah.
In the back seat. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Andrew, what do you think?
So
July 24th. 3 days before the warrant was issued, July 24th.
Oh,
this must have been the straw.
Okay. Right. Okay. Violation of special condition added through a modification on the 28th of July 2017. In addition to any other requirement, defendant shall submit to testing with a remote alcohol monitoring device that measures breath alcohol content for a period to not to exceed 4 months, not to exceed 5 tests per day. Defendant shall pay co-pay for services directly to the monitoring company to the supervising officer's satisfaction. Defendant shall not obstruct or tamper or try to obstruct or tamper in any way with any tests during the remote alcohol testing period. The court authorises a search of defendant's geographic location and movements by the probation office via the program's equipment. Okay, so let's have a look.
That was the Ramona era, right? That October, you said? Yeah, I think it was.
You think
and
he
violated. He
violated. I think it was coming to an end around about that time, if I remember correctly. So,
I thought he was doing well with that breathalyzer.
Well, he failed to submit a breath test as directed on the 3rd of October. So when did that come into play? The 28th of July. So, okay, so it was around about the time that I think the therapist was talking to him.
Those dates sound familiar. The 3rd and the 6th. Didn't he couch something in between that where he actually drank?
Oh, I've no way of looking.
Yeah, because
am I right? The 4th or the 5th? Yeah.
It was he drank on the 3rd, so the night of the 2nd. It was either it depends on when the text came in. I don't remember specifically. Okay, so it was on the 3rd. He didn't do it because he was drunk.
Okay.
The next day, the probation officer called him and said, "Hey, you didn't take it." Demanded that he take it right then, and he did, and he blew a positive.
Ah, okay. Okay, and then fails to submit another one 2 days later.
Right. And so I try to, I think, get that out of him as well and say, well, I think I went back in the calendar. I think maybe the October 6th was a Friday. And I said, well, that would make sense, right? But he was saying, no, I did, so I'm not really sure. But I do know that he failed, not just by not doing it, but he actually blew a positive at least one time for this particular breathalyzer.
When he was when he was being looked at.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So he's breached it twice. Sorry,
just to put into context too, I know we're not talking about this golden letter, but I believe that the letter is later on this very month.
Ah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was in the end of the month, wasn't it? It was like 28th of October or something.
Yeah, it was. I think it was the 30th, or I'm not sure what it was filed on the 30th.
Okay, we're gonna have a lot of fun reading that. But
I can't wait. The way he turns phrases is just beautiful.
I think most people in the chat, from what they're saying, I think they've all read it, but it's a lot more funny. We can all go through it together. So we'll do that another time.
Absolutely. Sure.
Right, Shin. In fact, Tiffany, do you want to read this next bit? You need to do some graft.
Sure. Let me see here. Which one are we on? Number 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Violation of special condition added through a modification on July 9th, 2015. Defendant shall participate and comply with the requirements of the computer and internet monitoring program, which may include partial or full restriction of computers, internet, intranet, and/or internet-capable devices, and shall pay for services directly to the monitoring company. The defendant shall submit to periodic unannounced examination of his computer, storage media, and other electronic or internet-capable devices performed by the probation officer based on reasonable suspicion of contraband evidence of any prohibited data and/or the removal of such systems for the purpose of conducting more thorough investigation.
I fucking hate the internet.
So once again, it comes into play of ruining his life.
That is huge. That is huge.
So,
especially for his underlying charge. It's huge.
Sure. On February 9th, 2018.
Oh, sorry.
Armstrong's...
You got to scroll up a little bit.
Armstrong admitted to Bryce that he had purchased an
unauthorized...
Bruce. Yes. Bruce, I'm sorry. An unauthorized smartphone.
That's a supervisor, by the way.
Yes, that's Maria's supervisor. And then March 28th, Armstrong admitted he used a third party to access the internet without permission of U.S. probation. He admitted that he would have the third party make changes to his YouTube channel to circumvent being prohibited from internet access. This is a violation of that agreement. So I'm going to say that these also pertained to either a home inspection where they found something, or it had to do with a lie detector test where he admitted it.
Yeah.
He admitted it. Yeah. Now, one thing that I will point out too is that he purchased another smartphone while he was speaking to me. And this was after... I would have to, I don't think that it would be the same one, because I think that I started speaking to him in March. And I believe that he went to Walmart, purchased a phone. It was never used because then he was going to have to purchase the data plan.
Right.
And that was going to be too expensive. So I want to say that he not only admitted it a month before that he had one, probably, was going to be violated for that. But then he went ahead and did another one.
They took it. They took the first one. They probably took the first one.
Right, exactly. And so he purchased another one, and this was all for nude photos.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Because if you think about it, one of the things that probation was concerned about, and the way Lorne twists it, it's really messed up. They were concerned about anybody he has a relationship with to make sure that they're of age. That's all. That's what they were concerned about. And if they were only seeing outgoing pictures of him sending to someone they can't verify their age, they could only assume that's, that he could be up to his old ways.
That's the issue there. That is huge. That is huge. That's almost, especially if they have and although they didn't mention any of the photos, they could always keep that in their file and may use it if they have to go to a full blown trial and he gets up on the stand. But this is goes right to the heart of his underlying charge. This goes right. And now I know.
Yeah, you're right there. I didn't. This is more.
It's not an alcohol problem. This would be a more difficult thing for me to tackle.
Yeah, this is directly linked to what he's on probation for in the first place.
There's even a bigger significance to all this. If you combine both the alcohol and this, what it comes down to is his clear dishonesty with probation. What it comes down to is his multiple attempts to deceive them, to misrepresent things, and until he's cornered with a polygraph. He's probably the defendant who's probably given the most polygraphs there. But the main condition, usually I think it's condition number 3. It's a general condition. That is, be always truthful with your probation officers. That is such a major condition that no probation could be effective without that. That's the problem. And they could not effectively monitor him. They could not effectively keep a community safe if he's not being honest. So he becomes just a bad candidate for probation for that reason alone. There's nothing that you can leave up to the honor system with him. They tried everything they could. They tried the breathalyzer. I think they went to a urinalysis, didn't they, Tiffany? I think they did that. Then they're executing polygraphs probably daily every time he walks in. He probably knows the polygrapher by his first name or her first name. But
here he is again.
But the dishonesty. But it's the dishonesty, and basically his failure to abide by that very important term makes him a terrible probation risk. That's an issue. That's a huge issue. And how would I get around that? I would blame it on the alcohol. I don't know what I'd do. I have no
Get another
idea.
case. That's what you do.
Strap that with the alcohol and maybe some mental deficiency thrown in there. I don't know.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because psychology has just said in the chat, Lorne has slight mental retardation, and I'm not saying that in a vindictive way. I believe he really does. Now, we don't want to go into that too much, because that's not. We can maybe talk about that another time, because we're
the definition of that, but he's definitely low IQ.
There's something going on there, isn't there? But we'll talk a little bit more, because we've not got much time left. But we'll talk a little bit more about. Because we haven't really touched upon anything that I wanted. Well, we have, but there's so much to talk about.
This is the final death knell right here.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if victim 1 and 2 were part of this.
I'm not sure. I know that you think that that's the case, but that would mean that they've monitoring all this that's going on online, wouldn't it?
Well, the question is, why would they throw him out of class? They're saying here they did it for alcohol use. I don't know if he ever came into class drunk or if he was just doing that outside of the class. But I think they just figured out they wasted their time if, in fact, they got a hold of that information, which I think is highly significant and relevant to figuring out what kind of program they could put him on, how much monitoring they would need. All this other stuff seems to cover that. But to know that there's actual victims that he never admitted to in class. He was basically defrauding taxpayers every time he went to these treatments, and he was totally dishonest, and basically looked at everybody else as worse than he was, and just not taking it seriously. And for that, I mean, this is like the most basic. When you get thrown out of rape class, I mean, you can't. What does that say?
Well, I think it's worth highlighting something that you told me the other day, Tiff, is that. We need to go into a bit of detail now about this rape class. I know it sounds funny. I don't want to get fucking banned by YouTube, right? Because it sounds pretty bad. But sounds like we're organising some kind of class to attack women. But of course, it's supposed to be a treatment class for Lorne that he attended. Now, he's been in this class since day one. He got out of prison or roundabout. Is that right?
I believe so.
And as we understand it, everybody that has been in there, including people that have actually physically committed serious sexual assaults, have passed this program, and Lorne never has. And that's true, we believe, don't we?
I do believe that it's true. At least one. He's, and I don't know how many people are typically in a class, but he has made mention of one person who was convicted of a physical sexual assault on a minor, and that person graduated.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I think, Lorne has pointed out, and this is also going to be in the letter too, so we'll get into it, but I just want to mention that all of this time he has been infuriated by the fact that he's had to start again. And he has said things like, probation is saying I have to start again because they changed providers, or that I'm not in a face-to-face relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that was bullshit. And he admits that in the letter that he wrote to the court,
Mm-hmm.
basically saying, Maria said, you are not admitting responsibility in any of this.
Exactly it. Exactly.
And that's exactly what it is. But he, again, won't admit that. So, I knew that had to be the reason. They couldn't have just said, we're changing treatment providers, because that would mean everyone would have to leave and start over again.
I think what it comes down to is how can you pass a class you don't think you need to be in?
Absolutely. And I hadn't read all of his assignments, because basically when he says I completed the book, it's a book of questions in essay type format, where they will say, for example, in this one, what do you need to not sexually offend again? And so one would think, logically, I shouldn't be around children unsupervised. Right. I shouldn't have access to pornography. I shouldn't, live near kids, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. He goes off into a tirade about the internet.
That blasted internet.
Do you have that?
Do you have somewhere?
That's so fucking funny.
But basically, and that basically just sums it up. It's like, and I talked to him about this, and I said, you didn't answer the question. And I have a feeling that's the reason why Maria said, you don't accept responsibility. Because if she's reading through the answers to these questions, they don't make any sense, and they don't answer them. So he's absolutely not admitting that he's a sex offender. He doesn't believe that he is. He thinks he got caught up in something because he was in a bad state of mind at a particular moment. And he was kind of the victim of circumstance. Mm-hmm. Wrong place at the wrong time. But that's not who he is. Mm-hmm. Mr. Penis wants to protect kids.
Oh my God.
All of that kind of bullshit. So it takes, it's going to take him to admit, I am this person.
And we thought he'd done that with you, didn't we, Tiff? And we know, I think everybody that heard that for the first time, I think we can all say, we thought there was a glimmer of something getting through, didn't we? We thought that finally, but when you listen to it again, because I've listened to it about 6 times, you realise that he was just repeating it verbatim. He wasn't taking it seriously. It wasn't sinking in, because he doesn't want it to. Because like you said, Shin, in order for him to pass that class, he's got to take it seriously to some degree. Mm-hmm. He can't. It's a little bit like when I used to turn up to French class at school. I fucking hated every minute of it and no interest in it and failed it miserably. And I was never going to pass it unless I wanted to. And there's so much work he's got to do just to even. It's just phenomenal. It really is. I think it highlights.
In school, you could have justified it by saying, "I'm never going to go to France. I don't know any French people." You could do. That's the way you would do it in school. With Lorne, he does it. He adopts the same kind of thing. I'm not a sex offender. I don't need any of this stuff. This stuff isn't useful to me. But look at all these other people around me. I mean, he just likes to differentiate himself from the worst of the worst, and he is the worst.
Absolutely. And he did mention as well that the counselor of the class that he's in right now said to him that he is not a predator.
Yeah, but that was earlier, right? That was earlier before. But once he admits it, once he admits it, I don't care whether he
what happened there was they were talking about movies, and Lorne said, "Do you think I look like the Predator?" And the woman said, "I don't think you're a predator." And then Lorne came crying back and said, "I'm not a predator, everybody."
Well, he
Right,
had a crypt tell him that too, and so that's pretty much all he needs. That's all he needs,
Yeah.
just one piece of validation with no supporting information behind it. That's all he needs.
Right. So who knows really what this guy said? Who knows?
Yeah, but the way
Lorne, because Lorne takes a message that he wants to hear.
Right, and the way I look at it, those admissions you got out of him, is the truth regardless of what he says afterwards, because you can't unscramble the egg. He can't do that. Once it's done, it's done. And so I consider that progress on your part, regardless.
I'm gonna have to quote The Simpsons. It reminds me there's a clip on. Do you remember The Simpsons where Mulder and Scully are in it, and Homer sees an alien? It's really Mr. Burns, and he's in bed with Marge, and he goes, "This is the part where you say, 'I believe you, Homer,' and then Marge goes, 'I don't believe you, Homer.'" And then he says, "Thanks," and then she goes, "You're only hearing what you want to hear." Yeah, I'd love an omelette right about now.
Yes.
And that's his mode of thought, isn't it? He literally interprets the world. Everybody interprets the world their own way, but his version of the world, I'd love to step into it for a couple of minutes, because it's different than the one.
Well, that's exactly right. Somebody just messaged me, IM'd me on this thing. They're saying you got to consider his environment too. I mean, that's pretty much all he knows. Those people up there, he's a product of his environment. And what does that say about that neck of the woods? My God.
This is something we're going to talk about another time, because we've all we've done is go through the document. I had so much I wanted to talk about. There's like a wealth of topics and deep thinking we can do with all this subjects. But with regard to his drinking and whatnot, Tiff, and obviously you were in contact with him for better or for worse for quite a while. One of the things that I liked about what you were doing is, you've admitted you had a bit of fun with him and you was fucking with him a little bit and this, that and the other. It turned into you, because we can all agree, despite what you believe that Lorne deserves, and he deserves to be in prison. It's like I said on the last time, I don't think he should ever get out. If he doesn't improve, he should stay inside, and that way everybody's safer. You wanted him to become better, because a better Lorne is a safer Lorne, and then innocent people are not at risk. So you tried your best and didn't even scratch the surface, did you?
No, it doesn't appear that way. I think that he was too far. He was too far gone. And something that I mentioned to him that is really important is that, you being a good person has to happen when you think no one's watching. That's how you do better. And you don't do things like bring water to the homeless shelter because I pointed out to you that you're being an asshole for taking it and dumping it down the drain so that you can return the bottles for change.
What? Wait a minute. What?
Well, the company he was working.
Give me that story, please. I'm sure everybody wants to hear this.
Well, the company that he was working for, I'll call them a former employer at this point, was hauling water for a water company, and so they would put pallets of water outside as extra or whatever, and the people who were driving could take some, and so he would distribute it to his family as well. But something that he often did was he took the water and he would dump it down the drain so that he could then return the bottles or the cans for change. And when he said that, I said, well, that's a waste. Why don't you bring it to a homeless shelter? Why don't you do something with it instead of that? And so then he started doing it, and he felt so great about himself. And he would take pictures of the cases inside of his trunk, and he would take pictures of the sign of the homeless shelter. And he would talk about how happy they were to see him coming, and all kinds of shit. But he didn't think of that on his own. He ultimately was thinking, oh, here's an opportunity for some change. So I'm gonna take it. They're giving something away for free. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna turn it into money for myself, and that's what he was doing.
That is a perfect
So,
microcosm of who he is. That's
Do,
that story.
do you know what else highlights his sort of bad nature, if you want to put it that way, was when, I think we can talk about it now, is when he thought he'd found out, Tiff, that it was all bullshit, you know, talking to you. And then the day after, he sent you a tirade of unpleasant messages, and one of them said, "Ha, because of you, I'm going to have to pay for a lawyer, and I'm not going to be able to pay Betty." And I thought, you fucking piece of shit. He was like using it. The first thing that cropped into his head is, I'm going to use this to my advantage so I don't have to pay that old woman who were ripped off.
And he's going to spite you doing it.
Yeah. And
yeah, it's not his fault because he wants to pay her. It's going to be my fault. It's going to be everyone else's fault because you're forcing him to not do that.
Speaking of Betty, we're going to Clobber's going to be resurrecting the charity drive, right? Is that so? Everybody, stay tuned for Clobber's stream later because Betty still needs some help. So
yeah, anybody that doesn't know, there's loads of brilliant content in the dump, right? I mean, literally, it's fantastic. Some of it is fantastic. Like, we all love listening to Lorne. What we can't quite put our fingers on why, but we love it, don't we? And there's some great stuff in there. I mean, do you know what's really great about it? And it's kind of like nice why we do these streams is because we have an interest that we can't generally talk to with all our friends and family. It's a little niche that we all share. And the entertainment that I get from listening to him is I listen to it in the gym. I'm like working out and I've got it on. I have like a gym at work and I have Lorne and sometimes Tiffany on the calls blurring out, and some people will walk in the gym and all they can hear is, "I'm not a fucking sex offender." And it's like, literally, I have to like turn it down on my phone because it's connected via Bluetooth to the stereo system. It's like dead embarrassing. Sometimes the cleaners come in, they must think, what the fuck is this guy listening to? But
I was playing that in the car, and I was at a stoplight, and of course I blasted it, and summer out, so all the windows are down, sunroof's up, everything, and Lorne screams out something to the extent of you keep showing your tits to everybody. It was really loud. and the people kind of looked at me, and I just said, just a radio show.
Yeah, exactly. You can just dismiss it as some kind of comedy program. Sorry, I didn't explain it fully, guys. Just in case you don't know, Clobbering Time will be doing a stream later, and he'll be able to. I don't know how it works exactly, but you can donate money to the dump, and then you can get access to all the calls, and that money goes to Betty, who is a real life victim of Lorne, who's still many thousands of pounds down due to that fuckwit. So
yeah, let me add to that. A lot of people are offering me money to travel to Bangor on the 3rd. I plan on going anyway, just so you know. I don't want your money, but if in fact you want to do something like that, send it Betty's way. That would be fantastic. I'd be so happy about that.
I know I would be there if I could.
I was seriously considering booking some leave and getting a flight. If I'm being told, I'm being totally fucking serious. You know, I'm actually.
I know we were talking about it, Andrew.
Because I'm due another vacation. You know, I'm going to Asia early next year, but I haven't got a holiday planned until then. I was like, you know what, I could fucking do that, but. Shin, I think I speak for the whole community. Obviously, it's a big burden to ask, but if there's any way that you could attend and give us your...
Yeah, I was actually, I'm planning on going, just so you know. I'm planning on going. Yeah, I found out it was a 3.5-hour trip for me, which isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So I plan on going. I actually asked a friend of mine in California who might fly out here and go with me. She is a new Lornographer.
Oh no!
Somebody I just converted over. I know I infected her, and but I think that it would be a really cool day or so spending up in the northern part of Maine and hanging out with Lorne. And I just got some new camera equipment too, so I'm kind of hoping that I could find his perp walk. I really would like to. I'm not going to be able to get him in the courthouse, just so you know. But if I can cozy up with a court officer or something and ask, where does the press go to get pictures of these guys when they're coming in? Chances are it's an underground garage, goes right to a cell. That's what it is in Boston. I don't know what it is in but if I get an opportunity to get a shot of him, I will. And if I have to, some people ask me to draw some images in the courtroom. I'll put some stick figures together. But I'd like to make I'd like to make an invitation to anybody who would like to join me to reach out to me, and maybe we can coordinate this. Shinskoala@gmail.com.
I tell you what we'll do, Shin. We'll do a special stream just shortly before you're going to travel, so that anybody that wants to join you, we'll go into more detail. We'll have a bit of fun and we'll talk about what you're going to do when you get there and what you can pass back to the community. So don't panic, anybody that's listening, anybody that's in the States, that part of it, obviously, it's a bit,
I was looking into federal court press credentials too. To see, but as it turns out, the press doesn't have much more access than the general public anyway. So I don't really have to get into that. So
Blue Boy just said he'll rent the Airbnb.
I'll rent the Airbnb.
Hopefully it doesn't get continued.
And
that it actually goes
you never
forward.
know. You never know. But if they usually put a motion to continue, and it's usually a day or two in advance.
Oh,
but
that's good. Okay.
But if it's on that same day, I still might be able to to at least report back what I see, because he'll be brought in habeas corpus thing. The judge already issued that, so he'll be brought in on that day. And whether they go through a full blown proceeding or not, I might be able to still get as much as I can, but I won't be able to give you a final disposition on what happens. Mm-hmm. So I'm planning on going. Let's put it that way.
That would be amazing. Just before we go, because the thing is, there was a lot of things I had in mind that we were going to talk about, and we've not even touched upon them because there's so much to go over. So we'll be doing these quite regular for a while, I would imagine, and it's mainly down to my brilliant guests, because there'd be no point me doing this on my own. But very quickly before we go, Tiff, for the knowledge that you have about this guy, very briefly, do you think... Well, what do you think is next for him? Do you think there's any hope for anything closely resembling a normal life? Do you think there may be a moment of enlightenment in jail?
I think that if we thought we had a pissed off Lorne Armstrong before, it's not going to be nothing compared to what we're going to have now.
Wow. What a prospect. And why do you think that?
Yeah. Well... Again, he's going to look at himself as a victim. He thinks that probation is fucking with him. He wanted to speak to an attorney
Didn't they tell him to fuck off?
They pretty much did, yes. Of course, because they're saying that probation can do whatever they want, essentially. I don't know how much they looked into it. I don't think they looked into it very much because, number one, he doesn't have the money to have someone do an actual consultation. We're talking about something free where he's, throwing a situation at an attorney and they say, okay, well, maybe you have a case, maybe you don't. In regards to probation, they're saying there's nothing that an attorney can do for you except for submit a motion to the court if you want to have something vacated. And with all of the paperwork that we have access to now, he has tried to have his conviction vacated a couple of different times. He does it in the wrong way. He submits it to the wrong court. They tell him to fuck off. So, he doesn't know what he's doing. I don't think that he'll go ahead and go through that process of having anything turn around at this point with regard to probation. But I do think that he's going to look at this and say something that Shin had talked about earlier in stating that alcohol was not his original charge. So why are they up his ass about drinking? And that's the direction I think he's going to look at it. He's really going to be very, very irritated by this, even though I think at this point, his back is up against the wall, according to all the evidence that we have. Just looking at this petition alone, he's violated several times. It's all documented. And they all have his signature on it. They have the lie detector test. They have the actual questions that he would have lied against. And I know that lie detectors aren't something that's admissible in court, but they have a lot of evidence against him. And just like with the Koala situation, he had all of that against him, but he came out, with his accusations against his attorney that he had for that time, stating that they didn't work on his behalf. So he's going to have the same things to say about his attorney that's working with him now. And he's going to be really pissed off when he gets out.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of exciting in a way, because I'm thinking, great, if he's going to be even more angry, what kind of crazy antics is he going to get up to? What kind of crazy lawsuits? Is he going to try suing Trump? Is he going to, what crazy shit is he going to do? It's an amazing chapter in his story. What kind of confuses me is, why didn't he get locked up earlier, Shin?
Say it again?
Why didn't he get arrested earlier? Because of all his violations, I would have thought that this would have happened some time ago.
Well, I think there's something to be said for the fact that his violations had nothing to do with his underlying issues, underlying charges. In other words, if he was reoffended or contacting minors or did anything like that, he'd definitely be brought in. But this, I think there may have been, and again, I couldn't answer this question, but there could have been a possibility that they thought they could help him, that there was a chance that they can get through to him. And I don't know.
This part here, isn't it? The 25th of July, Armstrong was suspended from sex offenders treatment for purposely withholding information regarding his behaviour regarding alcohol abuse. So in other words, like you say, he's not committed any direct offences relating to what he was inside for, but the fact that he's been in
he did.
Sex offender.
No. I don't want.
The internet.
The internet.
But what I mean is,
and the naked photos that he was sending out. I mean, they didn't mention that, but they'll probably have that in there.
Right, but I suppose that is. But with regard to the treatment, I would imagine that's something that's costing quite a lot of money, that they take quite seriously. That they think is inherent to treating these people, which I've watched quite a lot of documentaries and read quite a lot of things about it. The fact that it's taken him so long just to complete it and not even get anywhere, and then he gets kicked out of it, and that's got to be like the final nail in the coffin for them, hasn't it?
The first Mrs. R said that correct. The final straw was probably getting suspended from sex offender class, most likely. I mean, if you look at it and just the date, just look at the chronology of it. I mean, they issue an arrest warrant within a day or two after he gets kicked out. He's suspended. So that had to be the final, because that's the most essential aspect of his probation. It is. I mean, education, treatment, whatever it is, he's not even doing it. So who knows? Let's see.
But yeah, so I mean, how do you think he's just mad inside jail at the minute, Tiffany?
I think he is, absolutely. He, when we were talking about what could happen if he drives drunk and if he gets caught, regardless if he hurts someone, but if he gets pulled over, which is what I was always hoping for. But if that had happened, what would happen at that point? And that was the thing that I was trying to get across to him, is that you have the opportunity before you get in your car to stop all of the consequences that are going to go along with you getting caught, because you're not going to do it. So he would rattle off the things that he would lose. He would lose his job, which pertains to driving. He would lose, the income that's related to that. So everything, being able to maintain his own life financially would be taken away. He would hurt his family, his mom in particular, by going to jail again. He would have another charge. He would have no license to be able to drive anything. So just all of the things that would come along with that. And I think he's probably thinking of that as well. He's thinking he's not going back to work on Monday. He's not going to, he's going to lose all that income. He's going to lose his home. His mom basically said, if you go back to prison, Roy's going to get your house. So he hates that.
Roy's making himself at home right now, I'm sure.
Roy is the good boy right now. So, I think hopefully he's understanding that, the shock is kind of maybe going away, and he's really thinking about all of the ways that this type of thing is going to impact him. And it was really just a matter of time before it did.
I think he's scared. You got to remember where he is right now. He's in the federal. There's no federal jails. All the federal systems use the state jails to hold their people for pre-sentence facilities. So he's in a regular jail right now, and anybody who's ever been in jail and prison knows that prison is much preferable to jails. There's no services offered in jail. You're basically locked down all the time. There's no services. It's just boring. And you've got new crop of people coming in with all kinds of crimes that haven't been really classified. So you could have a dangerous guy walk in, and next to a shoplifter. Jails are very dangerous places. So my guess is he's scared. That's my guess. And going through major withdrawals. My guess.
In other words, he's not having a good time.
No, he can't be.
No.
And and I don't know if you've ever seen a cell, but those cells are, first of all, there's concrete essentially everywhere. There's concrete seats, there's concrete benches, there's concrete beds. You just put a pad on it. Not the most comfortable environment that he's used to, I'm sure. And the food also is much worse in jail than it is in prison. Much worse.
So, this will have hit him pretty hard, because even though the warnings have been there, he's started to pretend, or at least give some consideration to not drinking. We only believe he did that because he knew something was on the horizon. But he still wasn't expecting to get arrested. There might have been a similar moment of what he had at the Sting House where, his hat fell off and, so he's going to be in a bad state, isn't he? And he's not in the best state anyway. He's not been looking after himself,
Another blow to Lorne, Andrew. You got to keep mentioning his hat falling off, don't you?
I think it's your favourite moment, isn't it, Tiffany?
My favorite. Well, your reaction to that is my favorite.
Oh, I love it.
It's so symbolic of what happens to him. It's like his dignity has just gone. His last lingering thread of dignity has fell off.
If anybody hasn't looked at Andrew's analysis on the exterior of the arrest, it is fucking hilarious. Should we go through the rest of the document, because we're getting into what the probationary officer is going to do?
I would love to, but it's very late here. We've been going for nearly
I'm just wondering, without actually going to full analyzation, can we just go to the bottom line, what the probation is looking for?
So okay. Okay.
It's right here. They're looking. Okay, the original offense was 60 months. Now, again, I thought there was 5 years suspended hanging over his head somewhere for some reason. But here's what they're looking for. They're looking for 3-year imprisonment. That's their max. That's the most he'll see. That's the most they're asking the court to put him in there for. Chances are they'll negotiate from that. That 18 U.S.C. 3583 C3 is E3 is basically saying is a supervised probation aspect to that punishment. So he will still be on supervised probation even after he maxes out here. And all of the other conditions will apply as well. So everybody asks about that. Will he still be on lifetime probation? Absolutely. Will he still be on RSO? Absolutely. None of that changes. None of the previous sentences back in June 30th, 2008, other than the commitment time, is changed now. Everything else applies. So it's lifetime supervised, and that's it. So
someone's just made, Mrs. R's just made a point. All this physical and psychological withdrawal can possibly break him. It could. You know where I'm like with my people need to reach enlightenment stuff, right? Which I realise isn't for everybody. But I honestly believe that every human being has the chance, at some point, the opportunity for redemption. Like, but they've got to make that decision, and that's ultimately what's always been missing from him. Think about what he's going through at the minute, right? He doesn't know what's going to happen to him. He can't drink, he can't smoke, he's lost his car, he's lost his job, he's lost his mum said he was going to abandon him when, well, she said she wasn't going to look after him anymore. He knows he's going to lose his trailer. He's lost everything. And he's not getting any younger. It could be that the pain and suffering that he's in could wake him up to the reality. I don't think that's going to happen for what it's worth, but I think that there's always, because think about it this way: there's people on death, there's murderers, there's multiple murderers that have realizations on death row, and he's in Lorne's version of death row at the minute.
Oh, there's one more other option here. You got to remember the original magistrate, when they took a look at his bond issue, what they did was they made a determination that there was probable cause that he violated, number one, and number two, that the burden, which is really interesting in probation hearings, the burden's on the defendant to prove that there are conditions to reasonably protect the community from himself. And the court made a determination that there were no conditions to protect the community from him, or at least he couldn't bring up any. He didn't meet his burden for that. That is very clear to, very similar to the petition for civil commitment, in this case, criminal commitment, for mental institutions. What they're saying is, and we all know pretty much what the rule is for that. You're a danger to yourself, or you're a danger to others. The court is saying he's a danger to others, and there's nothing that could protect other people from himself. That's a short stint from a civil commitment. So don't be surprised if there may be a psychological commitment in a secured facility disposition on this case, because they seem to have gone all to find, or at least a magistrate did without a full hearing, that he's a danger to society.
Do you know what it says there, though, that additional period of release, supervised release for life? Isn't he already on that?
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Where are you looking? Again, that's just, I think they're just recounting the old disposition there. Hang on a second.
Okay, because he's already on, the RSO thing will never stop, ever.
That's their original sentence. And what they do is they say available penalties. They say they're going to ask for 3 years. They're going to do it under that statute, but that statute also allows them to carry over the lifetime supervision.
So
I got the statute here if anybody wanted to see it.
What do you think? Let's just say, for instance, for argument's sake, Shin, he gets 2 years, right? He gets 2 years imprisonment.
Mm-hmm.
What conditions do you think, very briefly, because it's getting way past my bedtime, what conditions do you think they'll impose on him on release that are going to be more stern than what he was on already?
Aside from the general conditions of being honest and being employable and staying, actually there would be more special conditions that apply to us. My guess is they would probably throw an ankle monitor on him for a while. It wouldn't be.
What would that restrict him from doing?
Well, at least they could monitor his activities. They could find out where he is. Some other way, some cheap way of monitoring, a cheaper way than having him come in for a polygraph every day. But other than that, I don't know what other restrictions they could put on him. They'll just probably send him out with the same restrictions with the modifications, meaning 0 alcohol and 0 social media and 0 sending naked pictures of your cock. 0.
This is why
None.
I think that if he doesn't have this kind of enlightenment experience, which I don't think he is, I think he's doomed. I think these conditions at his age, in his condition, in this crazy shit that he's got going on inside him, I can't see a way out for him. I just can't see.
If Tiffany stays by his side, he can get out of this. He really can.
Yeah.
So
I'll do that then.
it's a lot on your shoulders, Tiffany. I realize that.
And on that note,
That's what he always says, doesn't he? If you're by my side, I can do this.
Doesn't he? Yeah. Wow.
He sure does.
He tries pinning it on you, doesn't he? All these crazy misgivings that he's responsible for in the past, he tries pinning it on you.
Well, he might throw him onto somebody else, but he needs somebody to do that for him. That's for sure.
He does. Yeah.
Right. Mr. Koala, thank you very much. And I think I speak for everybody in the community. It's been immensely insightful to everybody to have your perspective on it.
Oh, there are other lawyers, by the way. I'm on out a few right now, and only because they outed themselves to me. Darth, I want to see you. Darth Armstrong, he's a lawyer. I believe there's another woman out there. We've had some side discussions, which is really cool. I'd love you guys to join this because the law is not a science, it's an art. So everybody I'd love to hear different opinions about things, different experiences. And there are a lot of lawyers out there and cops. There are cops out there, I'm sure, too. So we'd like to hear from you. You don't have to out yourself, but it would be helpful. Help me carry some.
Well,
of this
you
load.
never know what's around the corner, do you? And also, but yeah, Shin, it's been we love having you on. It's brilliant to hear your perspective on everything, and it gives us a new insight that I don't think we've, or at least I've not heard before. And and Tiffany.
The first Mrs. R said about me, I'm throwing fellow attorneys under the bus. Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not. Help me out here. It's all right.
And
Tiffany was the draw, not me.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to say anything, but yeah, Tiffany, thank you very much for joining us. All of your amazing entertainment that you are responsible for, we all owe you one for that. And it's whether your contributions got him to jail quicker or what, we don't know, but we'll talk about that another time. But thank you very much for joining us. You're brilliant.
And I might say that I speak on behalf of the community when I say this. We love you, Tiffany, so much. Thank you so much for everything.
Fucking much.
And by the way, there's a great party going on. I was there most of the weekend. I didn't want to leave. It was amazing. Ember's got something going on, and Clobber's got something going on. So this is a great weekend for Lornographers. I mean, somehow Lorne took Chris Hansen and Epstein off the front pages for us. That's a gift.
Yeah, this is a big deal. You know, this is why there's all this going on with all these people doing their things on it, and it's a great time because, as we've already said, it's why we are entertained to the degree that we are. We've always pondered upon that individually and collectively. So
we'll have to explore that later.
Exactly. There is we could spend 20 lifetimes going over videos like this. And I could quite happily do this for another few hours, but like I said, I unfortunately have to work for a living, so I'm going to have to go. Guys, again, thank you very much, both of you, for joining me. I really do appreciate it. And we've just been going less than 2 hours. So, guys in the chat, thank you so much. I've had, I know there's all other stuff going on at the minute, so I really do appreciate everybody dropping by. You know, if you guys weren't here, there'd be no point doing it. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we will speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye. I'm sorry. I stole that.
Hang on one sec. We've not. The TV decided to go at that exact moment, and I can't.
I'll see everybody in the chat room in the other streams.
Yeah. Okay, see you later.